The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcast host and guest and do not necessarily represent those of our distribution partners, supporting business relationships, or supported audience. Welcome to Transacting Value, where we talk about practical applications for instigating self-worth when dealing with each other and even within ourselves, where we foster a podcast listening experience that lets you hear the power of a value system for managing burnout, establishing boundaries, fostering community, and finding identity. My name is Josh Porthouse. I'm your host, and we are redefining sovereignty of character. This is why values still hold value. This is Transacting Value.
Almost 13, 14 years later, Make Peace or Die comes out, and millions of Americans do know the name of Robert Greeniger because Anthony heard that challenge from General Savage at his memorial saying, he died for millions of Americans who will never know his name. And Anthony thought, I'm going to change that.
All right, guys, welcome back to Transacting Value. Today, we're talking about guilt and coping and what it means to move through a kinetic warfighting environment physically and then after the fact mentally. More importantly, how do you help families, friends that are gold star status move through and process just the same to reintegrate back into society? We've got an awesome opportunity here today where we're talking with Anthony and Manny Marquez, the male lead and the producer for the documentary called Make Peace or Die about 1-5's deployment in 2011 to Sangin, Afghanistan. And we're going to talk all about it. So from SDYT Media, my name is Josh Porthouse. I'm your host, and this is Transacting Value. Guys, what's going on? Anthony, Manny, how you doing?
How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Look, I appreciate the opportunity. You guys make it some time in your day. I know you don't have a whole lot, but I assume you're not like local celebrities, or has this documentary skyrocketed your status? How's life so far?
We're big in Japan. I'm just kidding. No, people know who we are because the movie's had a good reception here in Tulsa, in Oklahoma. I played about 5 times at our local art house cinema. We've had a lot of support from the Tulsa Film Office, Tulsa Film and Music Office, and then from our local OETA, which is our PBS station here, promoted it last year, hosting broadcast party for us with the Tulsa Film Office. So, I wouldn't say we're celebrities, but we've had a lot of support, community support for the film.
Do you feel like you had that before you made this documentary? And Manny, you were the director, the producer. What was your role?
Yeah, director of film.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you feel like you had that kind of community support before you made it?
Anthony could answer that more. He's been. I was away for about 23 years, and he was here. So, yeah.
So with the chainsaw carvings, here in the local area of Tulsa, the local news channels have done multiple stories on that, and just different ways that I've been involved with different veterans. And so, yeah, I guess the community has always been supportive of what we've done and what I've done with the carvings throughout this area.
Well, okay, but you made the carvings during the production phase of the documentary, right?
I actually did the carvings in 2016 to 2019, and I continue to do them. I've done 82 of them up to this point, but I started doing them in 2016. And so from July 2016 to May of 2019, that's when I originally donated all the carvings to the 17 Gold Star families. We didn't start the film until May of 2021.
Oh, wow. So you just happened to get B-roll footage while you were making them? Or was that a plan?
We had made a short film called 17 Carvings about the creation of the carving for Joe Jackson's family. And that we had that footage. And then we had footage of him doing other carvings. So the way we built that in the movie was using that short film and using footage from the other carvings. But the carving portion of his mission took place actually before the movie. Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Okay. And then,
movie magic,
Yeah, absolutely.
That was kind of one of the premises of actually making the movie, is what the families told me when I delivered the carvings to them. They all said similar thing of how they didn't want their son to be forgotten. So we decided the best way to do that was make a feature film to give the families a voice. And that's when we decided to make the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so let's talk through that a little bit. Now, obviously, as we're recording this right now, it's basically Memorial Day weekend, Memorial Day timeframe of year, and there's, I think, on one hand, a lot of misrepresentation and ignorance around Memorial Day, maybe even the difference from that to Veterans Day, but also from a firsthand perspective, what it means to have any sort of relationship with a Gold Star family. So, can you walk me through that dynamic a little bit? Memorial Day, Veterans Day, some differences, Gold Star families, and we'll just set the tone what that is.
Veterans Day is for anybody who served. It's not for active duty. It's for veterans, the individuals who signed up, served, fulfilled their contract, were honorably discharged from the military or retired. So that's what Veterans Day is really around. And then Memorial Day is really built around memorializing, remembering the ones who gave their life in the service of the country. So those are the two distinct, factors with Veterans Day and Memorial Day. We want to highlight Gold Star families all the time, but really, they're entwined with what Memorial Day is.
This movie originally had a Veteran Day release on PBS last year, November 11th. And it was great. We wanted to get it out as soon as we could, and that was a great thing. We had 1.3 million viewers in the month of November on PBS last year. And they came back to us this year and said, hey, this is such a great fit for Memorial Day. And honestly, it's a better fit for Memorial Day because of the nature of remembering the fallen and the Gold Star families that we agreed to bring the movie back on Memorial Day. And so I've just been so pleased with the outpouring so far this year in the last week. Talking to people like you, other podcasts, radio shows, news organizations, people really grasping what it means to remember the fallen. And when you remember the fallen, you just don't remember them. You remember their families because their families are still here dealing and surviving and healing. And so the real impetus for the movie was to create a space for empathy, that we could remember our Gold Star families. We've never seen a movie about Gold Star families. And so we saw a need to fill that void with Make Peace or Die.
Okay. And the title, then, I initially thought it was like introspective, like get it together or it's just going to eat you alive, the grief or resentment or survivor's guilt. Anthony, was that a factor through the process or in titling the documentary?
Yeah. Manny's the one that came up with there's multiple ways that people can perceive the title. Make Peace or Die is the motto for 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. And so when we're, active duty, we're getting ready to go to on a deployment, that's our motto, make peace or die. We're pretty much talking to the enemy that we're telling them be peaceful or we'll kill you kind of aspect. Well, now after we're out, there's a different way that people can perceive that, view it. And, you have to make peace with the things you saw, were involved with, or over time it could kill you. And and we fought to keep the name Make Peace or Die because PBS wanted us to change the name to about 15 different things. But at the end of the day, it's so entwined with the story and the families and the Marines and everybody who served. It just had to be that. So we added Honor the Fallen at the back end of it. So the title is Make Peace or Die, Honor the Fallen, but we still go by just Make Peace or Die.
I mean, it just takes on different meanings. When you're in a time of war, it's like you make peace or die. You tell the enemy, make peace or die. But when you come home, you have to make peace or you will die. And these families, the mission is never over, right? It just changes. And so that was what it came to me when we were making the movie. I told Anthony, make peace or die. You have to make peace or you will die. These families have to make peace or they will die. It's eating them alive. And so that's the title. It's kind of interesting when we did the Spanish language translation for PBS. It was really interesting approving these translations because the phrase means different things. And in English, it's easier to catch the nuance, but in other languages, it's harder. And so Make Peace or Die was actually said 3 different ways in the Spanish translation because every time they said it, it meant something different.
Throughout the movie.
Yeah. It actually changes the translation if you watch the Spanish subtitles because the way we nuance it in English is hard to understand in Spanish. Anyways, I'm on sidetrack, but
not necessarily as tangential as you might think, because when we're talking about context, it's difficult as a storyteller on a podcast or a documentarian or a firsthand experiential, let's say, service member individual to be able to convey any of those lessons or perspectives or opportunities or insights or whatever to any other generation or let alone anybody else who just wasn't there. It's like trying to read a fiction book and teach somebody what it's like to be stranded on an island who's never left the United States. Like you just can't convey that stuff. And so when we're talking about context, I guess, Anthony, in your case, what's it like in Sangin? Now, I deployed to Helmand. I was in Marja, but I didn't go to Sangin. And it is still a different environment between the two. So what was it like? Was it everything it was hyped up to be on the news and explosions everywhere and high stress and second guessing every step? Or was there a little bit more humanity and, just a different way of viewing the world? What's your take on the environment?
I mean, I think it was a little of all of that. To be honest with you, I didn't watch a lot of news leading up to going on that deployment, but we were getting the updates from 3-5. Mm-hmm. So that was like the real time updates from the Marines on the ground, the unit who we were replacing. So, and it was brutal. The updates were brutal. They had multiple Marines killed, multiple Marines amputees, casualties. So it was like that weekly. So I think, like you said, like you were mentioning, it's a little of all of that. I mean, there's humanity in everything. There's beauty in everything. Like there's the sunset there is beautiful. It's hot. So, so I had never been to combat before that deployment. I was with security forces the first 3 years of the Marine Corps. So I did 2 non-combat deployments with them, and I went to Cuba and Spain and Israel with different fast platoons. So that was my first experience with combat. And I don't know how to explain. It's just when you get in that environment, life becomes real because it's so fragile.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it was the same thing with us. I think maybe half of our patrol, they were all partnered, but I think maybe half of our patrols were dismounted on foot and half were mounted in a vehicle. And then I was a turret gunner whenever we were mounted. So it really, the fragility is a good way to put that. It really did crystallize it and sharpen it. And I don't know if it was just because, there was just months on end of endless adrenaline, or not endless, I guess. We crashed pretty hard every day, but, finding ways to process through that and then reintegrate, obviously. In your case, though, especially with 1-5, and for the record, while you guys were in Sangin, I was just getting to Marja. I was with First Tanks at the time. But yeah, still same time frame, 2011. But what we're talking about getting situated and sort of reintegrating and processing, you guys had, 17 casualties in 5 months.
Yeah.
That takes a toll. What was it like in those 5 months? You still had to get up and you still had to go back out. But then also when you got back to process and sort of make sense of the world.
So I say it in the film that you really don't have time to grieve. When you're in combat, I feel like you just have to, you kind of have to accept the environment you're in to be able to function. Mm-hmm. And then just, go with the flow, accept that you could be killed. You could get blown up. You could, you see your friend get killed. You have to be able to accept these life-altering or life-ending instances that could happen at any point in any day, and to be able to function. So it's just when you come home is when you can actually start to process and grieve all what you experienced and what you went through. So 3-5 had 25 Marines killed, and we came in and replaced them. We had so we already knew we were going into something that was pretty bad. And, like I said, I had no combat experience outside of that. And a lot of guys in our platoon and in our unit, they were pretty green too. They might have went other places, but they had no combat experience. And so it was all new to me, but you have to get accustomed to it quick to be able to function.
Alrighty, folks, sit tight and we'll be right back on Transacting Value. Tampa Bay. Sun-kissed beaches, a thriving arts scene, and a community that embraces diversity. It's more than just a place to live. It's a lifestyle. At Porthouse Tampa Bay Realtor, I understand that finding the right home is about more than just square footage. It's about finding the right character, culture, and community. It's about finding a place where you can truly belong. Alongside a network of experienced marketers, inspectors, realtors, and lenders, we're not just experts in the Tampa Bay market. We are your neighbors, and we're passionate about helping you find the perfect place to call home. Follow along on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Porthouse Tampa Bay Realtor. Porthouse Tampa Bay Realtor, where values start in the home.
It was all new to me, but you have to get accustomed to it quick to be able to function.
What did that kind of, I guess, intentional distancing or detachment or, I don't know, cognitive dissonance? I mean, like, you had to learn that on the fly and then adopt it as a perspective and then try to drop it when you got home to go to, whatever, get groceries. Like, how do you reconcile that kind of distance?
And they say the military and the Marine Corps, you go through all this training, you go through, like building clearing, you do just all kinds of ranges, everything. They train you to go to combat and do the job, but then you're just young kids pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how to process that. So when it happens, everybody's different. They process it differently. And then when coming home too, some people could just turn it off. Some people can't. And then there's an aspect of some people come home and then they stay in the Marine Corps for another 5 years and they do 2 more deployments. So they're still around the environment of the military and the Marines who were with them. And then like me, I got out 5 months after getting back from Afghanistan. So we got back in October of 2019 and I got out of the Marine Corps March of 2012. So, and then even then I had my dog that I had on the deployment came back and she was gone within 30 minutes of being back in the States. And I didn't think I'd see her. And then, so it's just, I don't know. I think it's just everybody processes it differently. I don't know. I don't know if you can be taught that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's why there's counseling and therapists to help you figure things out. But
it's a different subculture, I think, in the United States, at least. I can't speak to other countries, but I'd wager to bet it's pretty similar to other militaries and service members as well. But it's a subculture. It's a psychographic that's difficult to describe. And that was one of that scene. It was your dog, right?
Yeah.
That's the dog. Yeah. That scene in the movie when you guys had to put her down, what happened?
So I adopted Allie in 2014. And so when we landed back in 2011, the company that contracts with the government, their civilian company, they took her back across the states and retrained her and put her with another handler. And she did 3 more deployments. Well, in 2014, the program that the Marine Corps had, the IDD program, Obama did away with that program. So all the dogs in that program either went to law enforcement or they went to their handler. Since I was her first handler, I got a choice to adopt her. So I adopted her in July of 2014. And then she just old age. She was 13 and a half. She did 4 combat deployments. I had her for 7 years. She was almost 14 years old. She's 5 months shy of 14 years old. But she lived a long life. She had a hard life growing up, as
4 deployments.
Yeah, 4 deployments.
4 deployments she had.
Bred for that purpose and was in Afghanistan. She was whelped in 2008 and just over 3 years later, her and I were training together in Mojave Viper, and then we went to Afghanistan.
Wow. That's cool though. And then you ultimately got her back then. What a cool story. At least that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Barry Switzer helped with all that. Like here in Oklahoma, Coach Switzer's a big icon with sports and football, and but that's how I got involved with Coach Switzer, and he helped get Allie back in 2014. And
yeah, that's cool. Well, huge thanks to him because that's a super cool opportunity that I'm sure is pretty uncommon. Well, so okay, let me ask you this because I know at least Anthony, you're a little tight on time here, but with the let's call it assumption that Allie was part of your healing process, or getting Allie back was part of your healing process. What would you have done if you didn't? How would you have processed differently if you didn't get Allie back? Yeah. Or was she the primary cause?
When I first got out of the Marine Corps in March of 2012, I came home in April the next month, and I worked for the family business for 10 years. But so that April 2012, I adopted a Doberman, because I didn't think I'd ever see Allie again. So I just gotten back from combat, 6 months prior, and I had this dog that was with me through some traumatic instances in my life. So I was like, I need another dog. So I adopted a Doberman, Roxy, the local rescue here in Tulsa. And then 2 years later, I adopted Allie. So I had them both. I had to put Roxy down in 2018, and then I had Allie, and then I had to put her down in 2021. So she was a big part. Like I said, she was through a lot of traumatic things in my life through that deployment. And then I never thought I'd see her again. And then when I did get her back, I knew the next time I lost her, she would pass away. So I knew it was a good feeling and good to get her back, but I knew there was going to be a time that losing her was going to be like losing a relative, she was a Marine. It's a lot, and a lot of people who watch the movie, they always talk about the dog scene, and it's like, because they can relate. Everybody has a pet, but she was more than just a pet to me. But what life would have been like without her, I can't really guess what it would be like. I'm fortunate enough that I didn't have to figure out a different way of coping because I have her.
Well, let me ask you these last two questions, Anthony, and then Manny, I've got a couple for you as well.
Yeah.
So then let's take the same sort of point and just flip it a little bit. You can't actively talk to Allie and expect like responses. You know what I mean? You can't have a conversation to process. And obviously, like in my case, hosting a podcast, or you guys, you've got each other, but communicating all of the trauma or guilt or just to help your brain process, makes a difference. So having a dog like Allie or even Roxy, I'm sure helps a lot, or any pet for that matter. But who'd you talk to? Who'd you reach out to? How do you, reconcile these things to reintegrate?
So to go back to your question of like when you talk to a dog, like they don't respond, they won't answer, but they listen. Yeah. And I think that's the good thing, because a lot of times when we talk to somebody, they don't know what to say. Like just a friend, and they don't have to know what to say, because a lot of times there's not a right answer to say. There's not a right response. If somebody's having an issue, they might not have the resolution, the answer that resolves that problem, but they can sit there and listen. And the good thing with Allie is she could sit there and listen, and she didn't judge. She didn't care. She just was support without even realizing. Dogs are that way to us. They're just support. Dogs are more than pets to people. So in ways, just having her to talk to her and tell, because that was something too, is her and I went through these things together. She experienced it with me. She didn't understand them. She didn't, she can't comprehend or realize that. But just being able to talk to her and have her was, it was a blessing and a help to me, just because she was part of my life during that time. But then outside of that, if I needed to talk to somebody else, I would just talk to people that I trusted, people that I were in the military, people that were in my same unit, maybe even in the same platoon. That there's a handful of dudes that I would reach out to and talk to.
I'm going to take a leap here based on some firsthand experience, that going through those kinds of coping mechanisms, talking to people, hanging out with your dogs, making this documentary, helping these families, like, finding processes and roles for yourself to cope, at times takes a toll on your self-worth, who you are, what role you fill in society, all of those kinds of things. So let me ask you this, I guess, as a final question then before you got to step out, Anthony, that what types of, let's say, values did you find worked for you to stand on and rely on and sort of reinstigate your own sense of self and self-worth?
So I grew up, Catholic. We're both Catholic, religious Christians. And then just the values, I think the values of being a Marine, the values of being a man, and the way that our parents raised us, helped me on a straight and narrow, I guess. I had my problems. Like when I first got in the Marine Corps, I had my issues, but I'm fortunate I never got hooked on like substances like drugs, like a lot of dudes do. And that come out. And, you know, I've had my bad thoughts myself, and but the values I don't know. I think the Marine Corps instilled a set of values in me that I just continued with even to today. I mean, the military made me. I think the Marine Corps made me who I am, and I even people nowadays still ask that question. Which you probably get, would you do it again? You know, and I was like a year or so ago. I was talking to a guy, and he's like trying to get the question out. He was kind of beating around the bush. He was trying to ask the question without actually saying it, and I just said, "Yeah, I'd do it again," because I mean, that's just the best way I know how to answer that question. Just being the person I am. I think everybody has free will to make their own choices. And you got to figure out what values are best for you. But the Marine Corps helped instill some good values in me and my parents and our family.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point specifically. I don't.
I might look like a convict, but I'm not.
Yeah, I don't particularly want to relive every moment, but I wouldn't trade any of it.
Yeah.
And it is an interesting sort of point. You know, I think the Marine Corps does nurture quite a bit and shape quite a bit, but there's something to be said for what's natural too. So, since I know you've got to step out, I just wanted to say again, real quick before you leave, thanks for putting this on the table. I don't mean the documentary, I mean your experience. I mean your perspective, and, you know, to your parents for helping get you into a position mentally and spiritually where you could volunteer, not initially, you know, in 2008, 2009, but in 2012, in 2016, in 2021, to make this documentary to help Gold Star families, and just, it helps. It keeps the legacy alive, but it also helps honor the memory. It also helps bring together a community, even just a subculture that needs it. So thanks.
Well, I appreciate it. And I've said it before, but I think all the things that I've done out of the military has come from a desire to continually wanting to serve in some aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not active duty. I don't wear the uniform anymore, but it doesn't mean I can't do something in some way to give back. So that's what I found was the carvings. What I found was trying to making the film, trying to get the stories out. So that's kind of, you mean you don't have to wear a uniform. You don't have to be like in formation or standing in a uniform to do some type of service. So,
Yeah.
But I appreciate you having me on. I got to get to this VA appointment.
Alrighty, folks, sit tight and we'll be right back on Transacting Value. Alrighty, folks, if you're looking for more perspective and more podcast, you can check out Transacting Value on Reads Across America Radio. Listen in on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and TuneIn. Okay, so Manny, I've got a couple questions about the production of this documentary and your ability to tell a story from, I guess you could say, a secondhand perspective that still is so impactful. I mean, this is just under 90 minutes of like battlefield, combat casualty care, kinetic environments, which you weren't physically in, and then the last basically decade of healing and processing, and I mean, literally working through your family to help Anthony get situated, communicate, and convey these things for his healing. So my first question, I guess, what kind of a toll does that take on you?
You know, so the thing is, the work I do as a documentarian, and I don't mean to be over the top or sensational, but it does take an emotional toll on me. My wife often jokes that I'm the woman in the relationship because I'm the emotional one. But as a documentarian, I do take in a lot of emotion and feeling and kind of wear that on my sleeve a little bit and try to, take on the emotion of the people. For me, seeing my brother suffer when he was at some of the harder points in his life, drinking too much, maybe suicidal. He talks about in the movie. It was hard. I was at 3 a.m. call. I was one of those people, one of the non-Marines he would call, hey man, I feel messed up right now. I feel like I just want to kill myself. I feel like, I'm at the bottom of a bottle, whatever. And I was one of those 3 a.m. calls for him that I think that's why we became so close after his time in this. I mean, we were brothers, but became close as adults, as men. And he trusted me with his experience as his brother. And it helped by the time we started, hey, I'm going to adopt Allie. Let's make a short film. Hey, I'm going to do these carvings. Let's make a short film. We kind of developed, and so I started to understand how he was using these projects as new missions to help himself heal. And when the film became a thing that we started talking about, I knew that would be the ultimate way to help him heal. Like he didn't even want to be in the movie. He's like, I want to go and I want to focus on these 17 families and I want them to tell the story of their son. And I said, yeah, Anthony, but it's like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Nobody cares about the Temple of Doom until Indiana Jones tries to get into it. And so you have to be the person that connects these 17 families because you're Anthony and you're the guy that cares. And this is your story as much as it is theirs. And so I was able to bring that to him and he relented. I call him the reluctant hero because it's like, as a storytelling, it's like, I don't want to do that, but I'll do it because that's the best way to tell the story. But when we would go, so my brother trusted me. It took years and years, almost 10 years, trusted me with his emotion and feeling and healing. And then he trusted me to go into the homes of these people with him. And it was never sensational. It was never, tell me about how your son died. Tell me about when it was, tell me about Jared. Tell me about Joe. Tell me about John. And then that's how it was like, I have interest as a filmmaker and as a human being and as the brother of a Marine that served with your son to know who your son was. Who was he to you? And then it just opened conversations and they were just open conversations. They weren't, there was no pressing. There was no gotcha journalism. It was conversations, Well,
you guys went all over the place, right? Like, I don't remember the exact order off the top of my head, but
34 states, 12,000 miles, 40 days on the road. Yeah, it was amazing.
Wait a minute, you did all that only in 40 days?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the movie was in 40 days. There were some scenes like, Pendleton came 5 months later, and there was one family that couldn't meet us because the dad was a COVID nurse or something, and the COVID was raging so we had to go back. But 90% of the movie was shot in the 40 days on the road. Yeah, and that was a device I had kind of come up with. It was like, as a filmmaker, you're always kind of looking for a device like, how can I package this? Oh, let's get 2 brothers in an RV and go on the road. Okay. We could have gotten to a minivan. It would be a little less romantic. We could have gotten to a Geo Metro, but it's like, let's get into an RV. And it turned out to be like the right move for us as a film production, because we were a film production too. And we had a table in there and we had computers set up and download stations and battery charging stations and, lighting compartments underneath the RV where we had certain it became a practical device as much as it did a vehicle to travel,
That's a cool idea too. Yeah. So what did that do? Because a lot of people, families specifically, start to build some kind of relationship or underpinning for a relationship. It's in small doses. 40 days between the two of you within 10 feet of each other all the time. Did that cause some mistake?
We didn't argue much. I mean, I'll be honest, and it's the elephant in the room, and we do address it slightly in the movie, but I'll say there's other movies that address this. This was not a movie about the withdrawal. This was a movie about the withdrawal had just happened when we went on the road in 21, the withdrawal from Kabul. We had decided from the outset, this is not a political film. It's not a pro-war movie. It's not an anti-war movie. It's a pro-empathy and pro-healing movie. And so, when we went on the road, some of my more liberal left friends would say, you really got to press them on what they think about, Obama or Biden and da-da-da-da-da or Bush or this and this. Like, we're not doing that. And some of my more conservative friends are like, you got to blame Joe Biden. And it's like, we're not doing that. We're going to tell the story about their son. And that's the story we're going to tell. It's not a political movie. But we do address the withdrawal in the movie. You hear Anthony listening to a podcast about it, and we do ask a few families, and we have to. It was the elephant in the room. But the only time we only ever argued was one time about the withdrawal. We were just talking about the withdrawal, and we just went back and forth and argued with each other, and then we were over it. I mean,
Mm.
But we were 40 days on the road. We didn't argue about the way to make the movie. We didn't argue about what we were going to put in the movie. We didn't. Like, Anthony trusted me, and it's always flattered me, humbly flattered me, that he's told people. I've heard him tell. He doesn't tell me this. He's told other people. I like the way my brother tells stories. That's why I wanted to make the movie with him. And it was like that. I feel honored that he trusted me with that. You know what I mean? So it's like we didn't really argue at all. We just argued that one time about one fine point about the withdrawal. But what the hell do I know?
Well, so apparently quite a bit. Now you've made some inroads throughout this documentary to illustrate, with stock footage or B-roll or firsthand accounts and actual video documented from deployments. Well, actually from that deployment.
Yeah, that footage is from Nate McCord. He was combat photographer for 1-5 at that time. So that footage is from that deployment. That's not stock. That's not just random Afghanistan footage. That is the deployment.
I mean, they're literally in trenches getting rained on by rocks during mortar fire.
Yep.
How did you come to the idea that you wanted firsthand footage, give or take 7 or 8 years after the fact, 10 years after the fact, and then actually track this guy down to get it?
So there were two things we said we didn't want to make because we felt like they've already existed. We didn't want to make a combat movie because you have movies like, Restrepo?
Oh, yeah, Hornets Nest, all that.
Great movies, but they're super combat footage heavy, obviously. And we didn't want to make a cemetery movie where it's just 17 cemeteries. There are cemeteries in the movie and it's appropriate, but we wanted to make a movie that goes beyond just the battlefield and the cemetery because so many movies fall into that kind of pattern, I think. We have both of those things, but we're sparing with them. But the thing we did too was we never wanted the combat footage to be sensational. We never wanted to see someone getting blown up. We never wanted to see somebody dead. We never wanted to see, even when you see Robert Greniger being Kazovac, it's mostly photos because it removes you. You see the chopper and then you see the photos and it removes you a little bit from the real visceral nature of that actual, it's just, everything we did, we wanted to be respectful to the families and respectful to what we were saying without trying to make a spectacle of their deaths. And so that was like a real balance to do that. Okay. And I think we achieved that. And everything that's combat footage or combat related is in support of the story. It's never sensational. Even the scene with the Afghan children. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite scenes. It's one of the most Gonzalez writing his grandmother saying, "Pray for these little children. They're no different than my children."
Yeah, who was reading that?
That was Gonzalez's father, Adon Gonzalez Sr. read it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Out of the book.
Yeah, yeah.
That was cool.
That's combat too, though, right?
That's what I was going to say. There's a support role. Yeah, yeah, and that's something, like, from my perspective. I'll tell you this: when I watched it just 2 days ago, okay. When I watched the documentary, as soon as it was over, I sent it to my mom and my friends and my family and some other veteran organizations I work with here in the area. I said, "You guys got to watch this." But it was for two reasons. One, because it was just really well done, and it was engaging from start to finish for me. But it wasn't like it put me back into a position that I wasn't ready to process. It put me in a position that I was able to process. But the second thing I really, really, really like about how you told this story in the movie is it also showcased for people like me, veterans, service members, whichever, the other side of the coin. I get home, I don't ask my family, "How was that for you?" Because I generally don't care. I'm detached. I'm still doing my own thing, and life in the military happens so fast. By the time I even consider asking anybody else, "What did you think? How was the last couple months for you?" Other than we mowed the yard and took out the trash. What'd you hear on the news? How was it? What did you go through? I'm already on to the next training exercise, or, I don't even think about it. But you told that story, I think, effectively.
There was a thing that we did in the movie, and I like to say this, and I mean this very respectfully. A lot of guys and women, I'm sure, come home and they want to tell their story of their deployment or their experience, or they want to kind of heal somehow cathartic way. And I've seen a lot of videos made. And Anthony and I talked about this. There's a kind of a genre of veteran video on YouTube. You know, this was my deployment. I interviewed 5 guys. Here's my commander, blah, blah, blah. But and I mean this in the most respectful way. They're not movies. They're like video journals or video diaries. And Anthony said to me, like, this has to be a movie. This can't be a YouTube video. Like it needs, and I was so happy to hear him say that. It has to exist as a piece of cinema first. And it was like, I was like, that's it, man. Because as a filmmaker, we can make movies all day about deployments and loss and the fallen. But if we can't deliver in a package that takes it beyond just the YouTube kind of portrayal that you see in a lot of things, and I mean it fully respectfully, it has to feel like a movie. You have to watch it and go, man, there was some great cinematography in that was amazing. There was some good music. There was great pacing. Wow, it sounded good. The audio wasn't bad. Like, it's a movie. It is a movie. And so when people sit down to watch it, they've seen a movie, and now they've seen a movie about 17 Gold Star families and 17 fallen Marines that they've been entertained. They've also been informed, and it wasn't hard for them to watch because it was well done. And I think that, and I'm not saying that because I made it, I'm saying like that was the goal, you know?
Well, yeah, but I imagine you're getting objective feedback from total strangers confirming that.
I mean, and I can tell you, you know, I'm not to be political. Like, I've had people that are by far not patriotic in their politics. They're maybe even far left, say, I am against a military, but I love your movie. Like, people and stuff like, I've never supported military stuff, but I love your movie, you know? And I'm like, well, you know, we were changing, because we presented a movie, not propaganda. We presented a movie.
And I think you did very well. Yeah. It flowed, it had impact, but it had levity too. It wasn't all difficult to digest. Some of it was relatable. And like I said, I haven't been to Sangin, but that's like saying, you know, I've been to the United States and so have you. Okay, well, Tulsa is not Tampa, which is where I am. You know, sure, but there's differences. The culture, the environment, the setting, the way people communicate, how things, I guess, trigger certain people. You know, it changes. And dude, you nailed it. It was really good.
Well, thank you. You did say something at the beginning of the podcast about humanity.
Yeah.
And I say that to Anthony all the time, like, that's back to the Afghan children scene. They're like my children. They're no different than my children. It's like, there is a shared humanity we all have. In that shared humanity, we understand several things. We understand loss. We understand pain. And like, in that, we understand, at least a good friend of mine who's a filmmaker said, this is not a movie about healing. It's a movie about the search and attempt to heal that may never come. And I was like, you know, he might be right, because that wound may never fully scab. It may still bleed. We just try to stop the bleeding a little bit and do it together, you know? And so like that's what I think we try to accomplish. And, you know, a lot of these families didn't know each other before Anthony, you know? And so one of the moms in the movie says, you know, you have one stick and you try to break it, it's easy. You take 17 sticks and you try to break it, it's a lot harder. So the XVII, the 17 that Anthony came up with, those 17 men that he honored through his carvings and through this movie now, those people have those Gold Star families have become a family because of Make Peace or Die and because of the work of Anthony. So for him, it was hard to see that he still had a mission. And he talked about it earlier, like, oh, I'm not in uniform. I'm a shitheel. I'm not doing these things. It's like, no, I have a different mission, and now I see it. You know, and like that was when that clicked for him. When we were making this movie, he told me one day, I see that this is my mission now. Like, and it was like, he's like, I can, you know, and now he's married. He has 3 children. He's come along, you know, he's come a long way.
Yeah. Well, good for him. And like I said, for the both of you, being able to foster that degree of empathy and healing is difficult from a first person perspective, a second person perspective. It's just tough to communicate because I think, you know, value systems are invisible. They're communicated only through action, and we're so inculcated with only paying attention to what's verbal or what's written. And the whole documentary for me could have been a silent movie, and I think you would have only have lost a little of your audience. It was awesome, dude. And I don't know how to say that any more impactfully, but it was really well done. And so when you look back, and these are really my last two questions for you. When you look back on making the documentary, helping Anthony process, and then your own personal journey, which I'm sure you grew throughout that as well, what are some of the key lessons that you learned about conveying that kind of degree of resonance and empathy and healing to total strangers?
Jared Verbeek's mother, Rosalia Verbeek, they're in Visalia, California. We went to film with them, and she made us breakfast. She wanted us to have breakfast before we filmed. Very kind of her. And we sat down. She sat down, put a mic on her, and I just said, "Tell me about Jared." And she just lit up like the state fair. She said, "Right there, you, a complete stranger. I've never met you in my life. You saying Jared. Say it again. Jared, Jared, Jared. I never want anyone to stop saying his name. That's why I do this, because I want people to know the name of my son and who Jared Verbeek was." And it was like we were off to the races, and it taught me immediately that, like, I just have to be a conduit to provide the platform for these families. They have everything they want to say. They know what they want to say. They love their son. They love their husband. They love their father. They know what they want to say. I just have to, being a director, literally, I just have to be there to listen and, like, corral them into a way that narratively makes sense. But I don't do anything but just provide the space.
Do you find that you do that? Well, I'm lying. Now this is my second to last question. Do you find that you've done that more regularly now since starting this documentary, just in regular conversations with family, friends, that you give them more space to be human, or are you still just sort of, your own individual? And
I've been a filmmaker now for 25 years in some way or fashion, from being a production assistant, grabbing coffee, to being a director of 2 feature docs, and I direct short form docs as my daily living, basically. But I've become, I think, more charitable, which is something like I don't go into anything with an agenda anymore than I really, other than I have to if it's a client or something. But in the work, my own work, I just want to be in a mode of discovery and receptiveness that is charitable and, like, open to everyone's experience, and, like, not prejudge who they are or what they've been through. And, like, to me, Make Peace or Die made me a better filmmaker, because I think you go, "Oh, I'm a director. I've been doing this 25 years. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to say. I know what I'm going to ask." I have no idea in hell what I'm doing. Like, I need to go and let the story be what it is. And there were 17 different stories plus Anthony's that needed to coalesce. And that was a massive undertaking. How do you take 160 hours of footage and make a 90-minute movie that is engaging and makes sense? And there's a lot of humility to your editors, to your collaborators, to my brother's opinion, and still maintaining control of the ship, because somebody has to go, "You guys thank you for that, but no. Hey, that's better than my thing. Thank you. I hadn't even thought of that. Hey, I'm not a Marine. Thank you. That makes more sense." Like, it's just really being open and charitable to what comes at you, but humble enough to, take those things, and then strong enough to trust your own creative instinct, because there's a reason why you've been given this vocation.
what does that kind of stewardship do to instigate your own self-worth?
Oh gosh, like Anthony said, we are religious guys. I don't know. I don't think I'm a great person. I'm a sinner like anybody else, but I do think that I have a certain talent that God has given me to listen to people and to tell stories. And I've never denied that. It's like I used to be like, I don't know, faux humble or something. Oh no, now I'm like, no, you know what? I am good at that. And, like, I'm going to own that, because I think that's a gift. I think it's a gift that you've been given, and that you have to own those gifts. We're given a lot of grace, and we have to, I think Flannery O'Connor said, like, sin is often the offer of grace refused, and it's like, we have to look at that and go, like, okay, if that's what sin is, then what's the opposite of that? Well, then I need to accept that grace.
Yeah.
And if that grace, part of that grace is being the ability to tell a story, and the ability to tell a story can help heal a Gold Star family or my brother from blowing his own brains out, then maybe that's a grace I have to accept, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's heavy too.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to go so.
No, not at all. It's totally valid. I mean, giving some dignity to other people and space to other people is way easier than giving it to yourself. But yeah, being in a position where you can start to identify giving yourself some grace throughout that transformation is, I think, unequivocally important.
I hope we can just keep doing this and we can tell more stories. And, it's like I said, it's what I do for a living, but there's other veteran stories we want to tell. I'm working on a Vietnam story right now, actually, about some Marines. And so trying to get funding and just trying to do the next thing, So,
well, let's stay in touch. I think I've got a couple outlets that may work well for you, either for sponsors, contributors, or just assistance with your documentaries. I'm totally down, man. I agree wholeheartedly with Anthony. I think your ability to tell a story, based exclusively on the fashion you did in Make Peace or Die, is phenomenal. It was just really good. Awesome job, man. So let me say this. We've talked about it now for the last hour. We've mentioned that it was on PBS, November 2024, and then obviously this Memorial Day weekend, 2025. But where do people find it? How do people get in touch with you guys to, see it?
Yeah, well, you can go to our website, makepeaceordiefilm.com, and you can contact us from there. The film is available on PBS for free, PBS Passport app, until June 21st. And it's available on the PBS YouTube until June 21st for free. I can say, without saying too many other things, we're in talks with another distributor that we're trying to get a theatrical release for it. We do think that despite the run it's had on television, which has been great, we could get some traction, and there's still an audience in the theaters for this. And so we're working on theatrical distribution, and then we're working on further home streaming options that would be on just PBS. But we've been really thankful to PBS because we were turned down from 15 mainstream film festivals, and you can imagine, name 15 of them, 3 of them off the top of your head, and you're going to guess right. We were turned down from 15 film festivals, and PBS saw the film and saw the value and saw that it represented a large swath of what America is. And they offered to put it out on Independent Lens, and we're very grateful for that outlet because it's been very, very rewarding for us and for our Gold Star families.
You've got millions of people now that have seen this story and watched this documentary that you guys have impacted from just for 90 minutes of their lives. And you could have potentially altered the next 70 years for each of them.
When Robert Greeniger died, Anthony was on the base, and they were having the memorial, in country. He was holding the flag when General Savage came up and said, he wasn't a general then, but he was their commander. And he said, this man died for millions of Americans that'll never know his name. And Anthony put that into his head. He was standing there holding the colors, and he put that into his head, and he goes, I need to change that. Americans need to know who he is. And 10 years later, Make Peace or Die we made Make Peace or Die. Almost 13, 14 years later, Make Peace or Die comes out, and millions of Americans do know the name of Robert Greeniger because Anthony heard that challenge from General Savage at his memorial saying, millions of Americans, he died for millions of Americans will never know his name. And Anthony thought, I'm going to change that.
I think he has. It's super cool. I, again, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and Anthony about the documentary, about each other, about the experience, about filming it. But honestly, I don't know if I can say more importantly, but I don't know a more appropriate phrase. I really, really appreciate the fact that we were also able to showcase that there's another perspective about these operations, about these deployments, about these experiences than just what we go through firsthand. I've never seen it. I've never heard it. I may have been told it before, but I've never listened. And you took me through 90 minutes of, but what about everybody else? And so that may not have been your intention necessarily, but for me, it was just really good, man. It was really cathartic. It was an awesome opportunity. So I hope you continue to tell these stories. I hope you continue to put content out and make more documentaries. But at least for right now, I'm really, really glad you were able to get it on PBS Passport because that's where I watched it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you watching it. And I'm sorry Anthony couldn't stay longer, but you know how the VA is. You got your appointment, you got to go.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. I think we will stay in touch definitively. And obviously, this is going to get streamed on Reads Across America Radio. It'll be on Audible. It'll be on iHeart. It'll be on TuneIn and Odyssey and everywhere else. Everybody listens to their most favorite awesome podcasts all the time, whatever they do when they listen to them. But for right now, I'd also like to thank all of our supported and supporting organizations like Florida Veterans Coalition, Reads Across America Radio, Firewatch Magazine, the American Legion, Florida Association of Veteran-Owned Businesses, and everybody else, obviously, who's had a hand becoming an ambassador and telling people about transacting value. If you guys enjoyed this conversation, and then you're going to love the rest of our conversation. So head over to transactingvaluepodcast.com. You'll find a link to listen to this conversation, and in the drop down, or depending on the player you're streaming it on, click See More, click Show More, and you will then see links to the film website for makepeaceordiefilm.com. You'll be able to get in touch with Anthony and Manny there as well. And then obviously, like just heard Manny say, until June 21st, you'll also be able to find links there to get to PBS Passport and PBS YouTube, be able to watch it for free. So I appreciate this opportunity to hang out and talk with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as well. But until next time, that was Transacting Value. Thank you to our show partners. And folks, thank you for tuning in and appreciating our value as we all grow through life together. To check out our other conversations, or even to contribute through feedback, follows, time, money, or talent, and to let us know what you think of the show, please leave a review on our website, transactingvaluepodcast.com. We also stream new episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time through all of your favorite podcasting platforms like Spotify, iHeart, and TuneIn. You can now hear Transacting Value on Reads Across America Radio. Head to readsacrossamerica.org/transactingvalue to sponsor a wreath and remember, honor, and teach the value of freedom for future generations. On behalf of our team and our global ambassadors, as you all strive to establish clarity and purpose, ensure social tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty or individual sovereignty of character for yourselves and your posterity, we will continue instigating self-worth, and we'll meet you there. Until next time, that was Transacting Value.